Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the world more than 2,000 years ago. The stars glimmer above the Nile River, their reflections trembling upon the dark, endless waters. The air is heavy with the perfume of lotus flowers, and the city of Alexandria, the jewel of the ancient world, rests beneath a silver moon. Somewhere, in the heart of that city, within the vast marble walls of a palace so grand it could only belong to gods, a queen awakens. But this is no ordinary queen. This is you. You were born in the year 69 before Christ, when the world was ruled by emperors, pharaohs, and empires. Your bloodline stretches back to Alexander the Great's generals. Your destiny is written not in ink, but in the stars above Egypt. And your name, whispered by servants, feared by enemies, adored by lovers, will one day echo through eternity. Cleopatra. The silk curtains sway in the morning breeze as the golden sunlight of Egypt floods your chamber. Priests chant at the temple of Isis, their voices drifting across the city. The palace maids kneel as you rise from a bed carved of ebony and ivory, sheets scented with rose oil. Already, the world waits for you. Scrolls of knowledge in the Library of Alexandria, envoys carrying news from Rome, treasures arriving by ship from the Red Sea. Your life will not be ordinary. Every morning you wake, you do not wake as just a woman. You awaken as a goddess draped in mortal form. The fate of kingdoms lies in your eyes. Your smile can change the course of battles. Your words can bend the will of men more powerful than armies. But tonight, as we dream together, you will not just listen. You will live it. You will walk the marble halls. You will sit upon the golden throne. You will taste the wine, wear the silks, and feel the cool stone beneath your bare feet as you step out into the gardens of the palace. For this is not merely a story of history, it is your story. A journey through the life of Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, the queen of the Nile, the woman who captured the heart of Julius Caesar and the soul of Mark Antony, yet remained forever her own. So, lay back. Let the waves of the Nile carry you. Let the sound of my voice guide you deeper into a world where time slows, where marble halls and golden crowns are not distant relics, but living, breathing reality. Because tonight, history is not something you read. Tonight, history is something you dream. Welcome, dear listener, to Dreaming History. Long before you knew the weight of a crown, before your name was carved into the whispers of eternity, you were simply a child born of Egypt. The year was 69 BC. The sands of the desert shifted endlessly, golden and eternal, as if the earth itself was alive. The Nile, that sacred river, flowed with a voice of its own, sometimes soft as a lullaby, sometimes fierce as a storm. And in that year, on a night when the stars shone brighter than usual, you took your very first breath. The priests would later say it was no accident. They said the gods themselves had chosen you. That the voice of the earth, the last voice of an ancient civilization, had been placed in your soul. And when you cried as an infant, they swore it sounded like both sorrow and promise, as if Egypt itself was speaking through you. Your cradle was not of wood, but of gold and ivory lined with soft linen. Perfumed oils burned in small lamps nearby, filling the chamber with scents of frankincense and lotus. Outside, trumpets sounded as the royal court celebrated your birth. You were a daughter of the Ptolemies, descendants of Alexander the Great's general. Though Greek in blood, Egypt ran in your veins like the river itself. As a child, your mornings were unlike any others. You awoke to the songs of handmaidens, the flutter of peacocks in the palace gardens, and the hush of waves striking against Alexandria's harbor walls. Scrolls from the great library of Alexandria were brought to your chamber. Even as a little girl, you preferred the language of scholars and poets to the simple games of children. Latin, Greek, Egyptian, you learned them all, and more. By the time you were a teenager, you could speak as many as 9 tongues. You would sit at the balcony, your small hands gripping the carved stone railing, watching the ships arrive from distant lands. Rome, India, Nubia, even lands so far east they seemed more myth than truth. Your tutors whispered in awe that one day those ships would not just bring goods, they would bring armies and ambassadors and lovers all bending to your will. But as a child, you did not yet think of politics or wars. You thought of the Nile. You thought of its soft, glittering waters under the moonlight, of its mysteries and its songs. Sometimes, when the palace was quiet, you would sneak away with your nurse to the riverbank. You would dip your small feet into the cool waters, laughing while your nurse warned you of crocodiles and spirits. And in those secret moments, the Nile spoke to you. Not in words, but in feelings, warmth, pride, sorrow, and strength. It was as if the river itself knew you, as if it whispered, "Child of Egypt, you are mine. You will be my last voice. When the empires rise and fall, when the sands bury kings and temples, your name will still flow like water." The years passed, and with each season the destiny grew heavier upon your shoulders. You were not only Cleopatra, you were Egypt's daughter, its queen-to-be, its final hope in a world that was fast being swallowed by Rome. And though you were still only a girl, the world was already beginning to stir at the sound of your name. The city of Alexandria was never truly silent. Even before dawn, the sound of waves struck the stone walls of the harbor. Lanterns flickered on ships that had arrived through the night, carrying spices, scrolls, silk, and stories from faraway lands. Yet within the palace walls, there was a different kind of quiet. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of anticipation, like the hush between stars just before the sun rises. And in that silence, you awoke. Your bed was no ordinary resting place. It was carved of ebony wood, polished so smooth it reflected candlelight, inlaid with ivory patterns that told the story of gods and pharaohs. Upon it lay linen sheets woven so finely they were softer than clouds, perfumed with rose oil and cedar. Draped around the bed were silk curtains, dyed in deep blues and gold, embroidered with tiny stars that shimmered as they caught the first rays of dawn. Before you opened your eyes, you felt the gentle hands of your maidservants sprinkling drops of cool rosewater across your skin. Their whispers were soft prayers to Isis, goddess of magic and motherhood, asking her to bless your day. You breathed in deeply, filling your chest with the scent of roses, myrrh, and honey incense that smoldered in golden burners nearby. When your eyes opened, the world was painted gold. The sun had just begun its climb, spilling light across the white marble columns of your chamber. The Mediterranean Sea sparkled in the distance like a blanket of jewels, and the gardens below swayed in a slow dance. Palms, figs, pomegranates, and lilies, all nourished by the eternal Nile. The day had begun. Your attendants moved with practiced grace. One held a polished bronze mirror before you, while another brushed your dark hair with a comb made of ivory. Golden oils, pressed from almonds and scented with cinnamon, were rubbed gently onto your arms and shoulders. Fine kohl was drawn across your eyes, not merely for beauty, but as protection, shielding your gaze from the glare of the Egyptian sun, giving your eyes their legendary eternal depth. Today, as most mornings, your robes were chosen with care. A gown of soft white linen, light enough to breathe in the desert heat, yet woven tightly enough to flow like water when you walked. Around your neck, a collar of turquoise, lapis lazuli, and gold, each stone a prayer to eternity. Upon your arms, bangles chimed softly with every movement, singing like whispers of the Nile. Breakfast awaited you, though it was no simple meal. A golden tray was laid before you, filled with warm, honeyed bread, figs plucked fresh from the gardens, sweet dates, roasted duck eggs, and a small bowl of goat's cheese sprinkled with herbs. A silver goblet shimmered with pomegranate juice, the color of ruby, cool and refreshing against the warmth of the morning. You did not eat alone. Around you, philosophers, poets, and tutors gathered. For even in the quiet of morning, your education never ceased. Scrolls from the great library were unrolled before you, poems of Homer, philosophies of Plato, the sacred hymns of Egypt. You spoke with your teachers in many tongues, shifting from Greek to Egyptian to Latin as easily as one changes steps in a dance. For Cleopatra was not merely a queen of beauty. You were a queen of knowledge, and each morning, as bread touched your lips and wine kissed your tongue, your mind fed upon wisdom older than empires. But in the hush of that morning, surrounded by gold, silk, knowledge, and prayer, there was a quiet truth in your heart. You were not just a queen in Egypt. You were Egypt. The Nile flowed in your veins, the desert winds whispered your name, and the stars above the Mediterranean bent low to watch you. And though the world beyond Egypt was loud with war and empire, here, in this silence between stars, you were eternal. By midday, the palace no longer whispered. It roared with life. Trumpets echoed through the marble halls, their deep notes announcing visitors from distant lands. The sun beat down on the great harbor of Alexandria, where ships with billowing sails carried treasures, amber from the north, ivory from Africa, spices from Arabia, silks from the east. Each vessel came not only with goods, but with messengers, diplomats, and sometimes spies. And all of them came for you. The throne room was a cathedral of power. White marble columns rose like trees of stone, painted with golden vines that caught the sunlight. Between them, the air shimmered with heat and incense, while the polished floor reflected every torch, jewel, and sandal that passed across it. At its center, upon a raised dais of alabaster, stood your throne, carved from black basalt, inlaid with gold, shaped into the wings of the goddess Isis. It was here that you sat, Cleopatra, not as a daughter, not as a woman, but as Pharaoh of Egypt. Your arrival was a ceremony in itself. The doors of bronze groaned open, and the chamber fell to silence. From behind golden curtains, you stepped forward, your gown now a radiant white, bound with a golden sash that glittered with emeralds. Upon your brow rested the uraeus, the sacred serpent crown of Egypt, its jeweled eyes blazing like fire. Each step you took across the marble floor was deliberate, soft, yet commanding, the sound of your sandals like the heartbeat of the kingdom itself. One by one, envoys knelt before you. From Rome came men in crimson robes, their tongues sharp, their voices heavy with ambition. They bowed low, but their eyes dared to measure you, for Rome hungered for Egypt as a lion hungers for prey. You smiled at them, not too wide, not too soft, a smile that was both welcome and warning. You spoke to them not in Greek, nor Egyptian, but in flawless Latin. Their surprise was visible, for they had not expected a queen to master their tongue so perfectly. In that moment, power shifted. They had come to weigh Egypt's strength and found instead that Egypt weighed them. From Nubia came gifts of ivory and gold dust. From Judea, rare scrolls of wisdom. From the east, silk dyed in impossible colors, blues like deep oceans, reds like fresh fire. Each was laid before your throne, each accompanied by words of loyalty and requests for alliance. You listened, nodded, spoke with grace, every word chosen as carefully as a jewel set into a crown. But politics was not merely about trade or treaties. It was about theater. You understood this better than anyone. At your command, musicians began to play, a slow, hypnotic rhythm of drums and flutes that filled the chamber. Incense swirled in the air, catching the sunlight in golden smoke. Behind you, servants unfurled banners of lapis and gold, their colors shimmering like the Nile at sunset. Every gesture, every pause, every whisper was a reminder to the envoys. This is Egypt. This is Cleopatra. And Egypt does not bow. When the debates grew sharp, you did not raise your voice. You leaned forward ever so slightly, letting silence work its magic. In that silence, men grew restless. They stumbled, they explained too much, they revealed their weaknesses, while you remained still as a statue of Hathor, listening, smiling, waiting. Hours passed in the blaze of that afternoon. And when the envoys departed, their arms heavy with gifts, their minds heavy with thoughts, the truth was clear. Egypt had not only defended itself, Egypt had enchanted them. You rose from the throne, your body weary from the weight of politics, but your spirit unshaken. Outside, the sun was beginning to sink, staining the sky with hues of crimson and violet. From the balcony, you looked over Alexandria, its lighthouse, its library, its endless people, children playing in the streets, priests chanting in temples, merchants shouting in the market. All of them lived and breathed beneath your crown. And as the wind from the sea touched your face, you whispered, not to the envoys, not to Rome, not even to your servants. You whispered to the Nile, I am your last voice, and I will not let you be forgotten. The afternoon sun softened into evening gold. Alexandria's streets shimmered in the heat, but within the palace walls the air was cool, perfumed, and hushed. This was the hour when the queen shed the armor of politics and stepped into the secrets of beauty, ritual, and transformation. Your attendants moved like shadows, graceful and wordless. With jeweled fingers, they untied the golden sash from your waist, letting the white linen gown fall in a ripple to the marble floor. In its place, they draped you in a robe of silk imported from the east, as light as air, dyed in shades of deep, indigo and starry silver. The fabric whispered as it touched your skin, flowing like water with each breath you took. You were led to the bath chamber, a sanctuary of stone and water lit by oil lamps and carved lotus patterns. The bath itself was no ordinary pool. It was cut from black granite, filled with warm water drawn from the Nile and perfumed with petals of rose, iris, and blue lotus. As you stepped into it, the water embraced you like a lover, soft and fragrant, carrying with it the eternal spirit of Egypt. Your handmaidens worked with delicate care. They poured golden oils across your shoulders, massaged your arms with crushed almond paste, and polished your skin with salt gathered from the Red Sea. Every gesture was ritual. Every scent, every texture was not just to cleanse, but to sanctify. For you were not only a queen, you were the living image of Isis, the goddess of rebirth, and your beauty was both weapon and worship. When you emerged, your skin glistened in the lamplight. A mirror of polished bronze reflected your face. Your eyes darkened with lines of kohl, drawn not merely for allure, but to shield them from the glare of the sun. Your lips were stained with carmine red, pressed from crushed pomegranate seeds, glowing like a ruby flame. Around your neck, your attendants fastened the broad collar of Egypt, rows of turquoise, lapis lazuli, carnelian, and gold. Each stone charged with power, each gem a prayer of protection. Your hair was brushed with oils of cedar and frankincense, then braided with fine threads of gold. A diadem was placed upon your head, slender, shining, crowned with the golden uraeus, the sacred cobra, ready to strike at all who dared threaten your throne. But perhaps the most mesmerizing touch was the fragrance. From alabaster jars, rare, perfumes were opened, kephi, the sacred blend of honey, raisins, cinnamon, and myrrh, a scent so rich it was said to carry prayers to the heavens. You breathed it in, and the room itself seemed to bow. Wherever you walked, the air would follow, carrying whispers of your presence before you even arrived. When all was done, you did not look like a woman of flesh and bone. You looked like eternity, carved into mortal form. A goddess draped in silk and gold, with eyes that could command empires and a smile that could unravel the strongest of men. And yet, beneath the coal and jewels, beneath the oils and perfumes, you felt the weight of it all. Beauty was not a gift. It was a crown, as heavy as the golden diadem upon your head. For the world did not see Cleopatra the woman. They saw Cleopatra the queen, Cleopatra the Nile, Cleopatra the eternal. And so, as the last rays of the sun faded, into twilight, you rose from the chamber of beauty, each step echoing softly across the marble halls. The palace awaited. The night awaited. The world awaited. The sun slipped below the horizon, and with it, Alexandria transformed. The streets outside the palace filled with firelight and laughter, the markets echoing with voices of merchants, sailors, and storytellers. But within your palace, the evening was a world of its own, richer, louder, brighter than the city beyond. The banquet hall stretched like a temple of light. Golden lamps burned along the marble walls, their flames reflected 100 times in polished bronze mirrors. Silk banners in crimson and sapphire fluttered from the high ceiling, their threads woven with patterns of falcons and lotus flowers. The air was thick with fragrance, roast meats, spiced wine, and the eternal perfume of incense. At the center of this world was a table of carved cedar wood, long and grand, its surface shimmering beneath dishes of gold and silver. Platters of food covered every inch. Roasted duck glazed with honey, skin crisp and glistening. Pomegranates split open, their ruby seeds spilling like jewels. Fresh figs and grapes cooled in shallow bowls of snow brought down from the mountains. Loaves of warm bread, soft as clouds, baked in clay ovens and brushed with olive oil. Fish from the Nile, seasoned with coriander and garlic, roasted until their fragrance filled the hall. And pitchers of wine from the vineyards of Mareotis, spiced with cinnamon, poured into cups of silver. This was no simple meal. This was a theater of abundance, a stage upon which Egypt displayed her wealth to the world. Every bite was proof that the Nile fed her children, that the desert bent to her will, that Cleopatra's reign was one of endless prosperity. Guests filled the chamber, generals, priests, scholars, envoys from distant lands. They reclined on, couches of silk, their laughter loud, their cups overflowing. Musicians played in the background, flutes, harps, and drums weaving a melody that seemed to rise and fall with the rhythm of the Nile itself. Dancers moved like flowing water, their bodies glittering with golden dust, their steps tracing patterns that told stories of gods and battles, of love and death. And at the head of it all, you. You reclined upon a couch of carved ivory, cushions, of peacock feathers at your back, a goblet of wine in your hand. Light danced upon your jeweled collar, upon the gold dust brushed across your skin, upon the serpent crown that marked you as Pharaoh. Every movement you made, no matter how small, was an event. A lifted brow, a half smile, a glance from your dark-lined eyes. Men leaned closer, women whispered, musicians seemed to play louder, as though the entire hall bent itself around your presence. You spoke little, but when you did, the room quieted. A jest from your lips sent laughter rippling like waves. A sharp question made an envoy falter, spilling his wine. A single word in a foreign tongue astonished those who thought they could speak in secrets before you. For Cleopatra did not only rule with armies or gold. You ruled with the power of presence, of wit, of a mind sharper than any blade. As the night deepened, the banquet shifted from formality to revelry. Cups were emptied and filled again. Laughter grew looser, music wilder. Yet you remained steady, as unshaken as the statues of Isis that watched over the hall. Behind your smile lay calculation. Behind your beauty lay vigilance. you watched. You listened, you measured. Every ally, every rival, every whisper of loyalty or betrayal, nothing escaped your notice. And when the feast finally began to fade, when the lamps burned low and the guests stumbled into the night, the hall was left in silence once more. Plates of half-eaten fruit lay abandoned. Bowls of wine reflected the last flicker of flame. And there, at the center of it all, you sat still, alone, yet not lonely. For you knew the truth that no one else in that hall dared to admit. Banquets end. Songs fade. Empires crumble. But Cleopatra endures. When the last echoes of laughter had faded from the banquet hall, when the torches were dimmed and the courtyards emptied, you withdrew into the inner chambers of the palace. Your sanctuary, your hidden world. Few ever saw this place. It was not the throne room of marble, nor the banquet hall of gold. It was softer, more secret, though no less dazzling. The walls were lined with tapestries from India, woven with peacocks and blossoms in colors so vivid they seemed to breathe. Cushions embroidered with threads of silver and blue were piled high upon low couches. Lamps of alabaster glowed with gentle light, filling the air with the scent of frankincense and cinnamon. Here, treasures lay not as symbols of power, but as companions. Shelves of alabaster jars held perfumes rare enough to ransom a kingdom. Oils of myrrh, cedar, and saffron. Ivory boxes hid necklaces of pearls the size of grapes, sapphires cut so sharp they seemed to capture the stars themselves. Alongside them rested books and scrolls, poetry in Greek, hymns in Egyptian, fragments of wisdom written by hands long turned to dust. This was Cleopatra's paradox, a woman of jewels and scrolls, silk and wisdom. You let your attendants slip away, leaving you in solitude. The golden diadem was set aside, the serpent crown placed upon its stand, your silk gown loosened at the shoulders, falling softly as you reclined upon the cushions. In the stillness, the world seemed to pause. No Rome, no politics, no banquets. Only the whisper of the Nile drifting through the open balcony doors. It was in these hours that your thoughts grew most alive. You wondered if power was truly strength, or only a performance you played each day upon marble stages. You thought of the envoys who had bowed before you, men who feared you, men who desired you, men who wanted to possess Egypt as they longed to possess its queen. Yet none of them saw you, not the girl who once dipped her feet in the Nile, not the woman who dreamed not of conquest, but of eternity. And though you were surrounded by treasures, it was not gold or gems that stirred your heart. It was the silence, the luxury of being unseen, of being simply Cleopatra, not pharaoh, not goddess, not legend. Just a woman beneath the stars. You walked barefoot across the marble floor to the balcony, the night air warm against your skin. The city stretched below, lanterns flickering in the streets, laughter drifting from taverns, the faint hum of life continuing far beyond your palace walls. You leaned against the railing, the jewels at your wrists chiming softly, and gazed upon the Nile. The river glowed in the moonlight, silver and endless. It moved without hurry, without hesitation. Empires rose and fell, kings lived and died. But the Nile endured, and in its reflection, you saw yourself, eternal, untamed, destined to outlast those who sought to claim you. Yet, within you lingered a secret desire, not for more gold, nor for larger armies, nor for new lands, but for something more elusive, to be remembered not only as a queen, but as a soul. To be loved not only for your crown, but for your heart. To be seen, truly seen, beneath the silks, the kohl, the crown. And as the night deepened, as the last lamps flickered, you whispered a prayer to the stars. Let history remember me not only as Pharaoh, not only as Queen of the Nile, but as Cleopatra, the woman who lived, who loved, who dreamed. In the stillness of your private chamber, among treasures and secrets, it was the most human desire of all. The palace grew silent. The banquet had ended, the servants had gone, the lamps were dimmed. Only a handful of torches flickered in the courtyards, their flames dancing like restless spirits in the night wind. You stepped out onto the balcony that overlooked the Nile. Barefoot, your silken gown trailing softly against the marble, you moved as though the night itself welcomed you. The air was warm, touched with the sweetness of lotus blossoms drifting from the gardens. Crickets sang in the reeds below, their rhythm joining the distant lapping of water against stone. The Nile stretched endlessly, a silver ribbon beneath the moon. It shimmered with reflections of starlight, carrying with it the stories of centuries. Somewhere upstream, farmers still sang their harvest songs. Somewhere downstream, crocodiles slept among the reeds. But here, at Alexandria, the Nile was quiet, wide, eternal. You leaned against the cool stone railing, eyes raised to the heavens. Above, the sky was a canopy of stars, millions of them, bright and sharp against the darkness. You knew them by name. Your tutors had taught you the constellations of Greece, the sacred stars of Egypt, the wandering planets that foretold the will of gods. Yet as you gazed upon them, they seemed less like distant fires and more like ancient companions watching over you. The wind carried whispers across the water. Perhaps it was only the rustle of reeds, perhaps only the hum of the city beyond. But to you, it was something more. It was the voice of the Nile, the voice that had spoken to you since childhood. A voice older than Rome, older than empires, older than even the pyramids. Child of Egypt, it seemed to say. You are my daughter. You are my queen. When kingdoms fall, when stones crumble, when names are forgotten, your soul will remain, flowing as I flow, eternal as I am eternal. You closed your eyes. For a moment, you were not the queen who ruled with cunning and charm, not the goddess draped in silk and gold. You were the little girl again, the child who once dipped her feet into the river, laughing, listening to its song. And in that moment, surrounded by stars and water, you felt both the weight of destiny and the freedom of eternity. Behind you, the palace whispered with life, the faint echo of guards patrolling, the soft creak of wooden doors, the sigh of wind through stone halls. But out here, with the stars above and the river below, the world was infinite. You whispered into the night, not to Rome, not to lovers, not to servants or generals, but to the Nile itself. I am yours. I am your last voice. Carry me, as you always have, into the ages yet to come. The stars glittered, the river flowed, and in that silence, Cleopatra, the queen, the pharaoh, the woman, was eternal. And so the night carried you gently toward dreams, as the Nile carried Egypt gently toward forever. The night deepened. The stars wheeled silently above the Nile, their light falling like silver dust upon the world below. Within the palace, lamps flickered low, shadows stretched long, and silence returned once more. You lay upon cushions of silk, your eyes heavy, your breath soft, yet your spirit wide awake. In your heart you felt it, that strange, eternal truth. That though kingdoms may crumble, though Rome may rise and fall, though time itself may move like shifting sands, your name, Cleopatra, would never fade. You were not simply a queen of Egypt, you were the soul of Egypt. When future generations would speak of beauty, they would whisper your name. When they spoke of cunning, of intelligence, of a woman who could outwit generals and captivate emperors, they would remember you. And when poets sought to write of love and loss, they would tell your story, of a queen who lived not only with power, but with passion. The Nile flowed on, carrying your reflection beneath the moon. And though your body was mortal, though your Days would one day end. Your spirit would drift forever with the river, unbroken, unforgotten. For you were not only the last pharaoh, you were the eternal queen. And so, as the dream closes, as the night folds its wings around you, let the sound of the Nile linger in your heart. Let the stars above remind you that history is not distant. It is alive, breathing, waiting for you to enter. Tonight, you walked with Cleopatra. Tonight, you lived her day, her rituals, her feasts, her secrets, her dreams. And as you drift into sleep, remember, history is not only to be studied, history is to be dreamed. Thank you for joining this journey, my friend. And if you wish to wander through more nights, more stories, more forgotten worlds, stay with us and dream again. This is Dreaming History,